The smell of antiseptic hit me as soon as I stepped into the urgent care clinic. My face throbbed with each heartbeat, and I could barely see out of my left eye. The nurse at the reception desk took one look at me and rushed me straight back, skipping the usual paperwork. The fluorescent lights hummed too loudly, and my headache felt like it was splitting my skull. I tasted blood in the back of my throat, copper and shame. "Domestic violence?" she asked quietly, already reaching for a special form. "No," I said quickly, too quickly. "I fell down some stairs at the parking garage." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes as she handed me an ice pack. But she didn't push. They never do when you insist everything's fine. 3 hours later, I sat in my car outside our house in Edina, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The swelling had gone down slightly, but the bruises were darkening into ugly purple blotches. There was no way John wouldn't notice. No amount of makeup could cover this mess. John's car was already in the driveway. Of course he was home early today, of all days. I texted him earlier saying I'd be working late again, the same lie I'd been telling for 3 months. Instead, I'd been at the Marriott in Bloomington with Roger, my supervisor, until his wife showed up. I touched my tender cheekbone and winced. Diane had caught us in bed and she hadn't come alone. Her brother, built like a linebacker, stood guard at the door while she went absolutely ballistic on both of us. Roger tried to protect me at first, but after she broke his nose with her elbow, he just curled up on the floor and took it. That coward hadn't even warned me she was suspicious. He'd been so confident, so smooth. "My wife doesn't care what I do," he'd said. "We have an understanding." Yeah, right. The understanding was that if she caught him, she'd beat the hell out of both of us. I couldn't put off going inside any longer. I grabbed my purse, making sure my torn pantyhose were stuffed deep inside, and checked that the pearl necklace Roger had given me was hidden under my blouse. I'd deal with that problem later. John jumped up from the couch when I walked in. His face went from concern to horror to confusion in about 3 seconds. "Megan! Oh my God! What happened?" I'd rehearsed this on the drive home. "I was mugged in the parking garage. Some guy in a ski mask tried to grab my purse." "Are you okay? Did you call the police? We need to get you to the hospital." He was already reaching for his keys. "No, I'm fine. The security guard scared him off. I don't want to deal with police reports and hospitals. I just want to take a bath and go to bed." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he let it go. Probably chalked it up to shock. John hesitated, studying my face. I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt? Suspicion? But then he was beside me, gently helping me to the couch. "Let me get you some water. Do you want me to draw you a bath?" As he fussed over me, guilt twisted in my stomach like a knife. John was a good man. Boring, predictable, but good. He managed 4 coffee shops for a national chain, came home at the same time every night, and got excited about things like new espresso machines and profitable quarterly reports. He even laid out his clothes for the week every Sunday night. 5 shirts, 5 pairs of slacks, lined up like soldiers. At the time, it made me want to scream. I wanted chaos. I wanted fire. I didn't realize that fire burns everything down. Looking at him now, holding a glass of water for me, I realized how much I'd taken that stability for granted. We'd been married 6 years, together for 11. Somewhere along the way, I'd started feeling like I was suffocating in our perfectly planned life. Roger had been like oxygen. He was everything John wasn't. Spontaneous, dangerous, exciting. He'd started as just another supervisor in our customer service department. We handled escalated calls from angry customers, the ones who'd already been through 2 levels of overseas support and were ready to burn the company down. It was stressful work, and Roger had a way of making it fun. He'd do impressions of the angriest callers, bring in donuts on particularly brutal days, and always knew exactly what to say to calm down an irate customer or an overwhelmed team member. 4 months ago, I'd been dealing with a particularly nasty employee situation. Malik from my team had been showing up late, taking extra long breaks and giving attitude to everyone. I didn't know how to handle it without making things worse. Roger had stepped in, smooth as silk, and resolved everything. Malik shaped up immediately. "How did you do that?" I'd asked over coffee in the break room. "It's all about reading people," Roger had said, his green eyes twinkling. "Malik just needed to feel heard. You're too nice, Megan. Sometimes you have to show a little teeth." That's how it started. Coffee breaks became lunches. Lunches became drinks after work. He'd tell me about his marriage, how his wife Diane was cold, focused only on their kids, how they were basically roommates. I'd tell him about John, how he scheduled our date nights in his planner, how he'd mapped out our next 10 years down to when we'd have kids and what school district we'd move to. "You deserve someone who sees you as more than just a checkbox on their life plan," Roger had said one night over martinis. His hand had brushed mine across the table, and I'd felt more alive in that moment than I had in years. The first time we went to the hotel, I told myself it was just one mistake. Just once, to get it out of my system. But once became twice, twice became weekly, and before I knew it, I was an expert at lying. Late nights at the office, Saturday inventory counts, team building events that didn't exist. John never questioned it. Why would he? I'd been the perfect wife for 6 years. I paid the bills on time, kept the house spotless, attended every corporate coffee shop function with a smile. I even pretended to care about supply chain disruptions and seasonal drink promotions. "Your bath is ready?" John's voice pulled me back to the present. He helped me upstairs, and I saw him notice my undamaged dress and shoes. His forehead creased, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. In the bathroom, I locked the door and finally let myself breathe. I unclasped Roger's necklace and stared at it. He'd given it to me on Monday, making a big production of it in the break room when no one else was around. "For my best girl," he'd said, "you deserve beautiful things." I'd tried to refuse. John had already been asking questions about Roger, especially after I'd stupidly gushed about how helpful he'd been with the Malik situation. I'd been mentioning Roger's name too often, praising him too much. When you're infatuated with someone, it's hard not to talk about them constantly. But Roger had insisted on the necklace. "Tell him it's a performance bonus," he'd laughed. "Or better yet, don't tell him at all. What he doesn't know won't hurt him." I'd worn it under my clothes all week, feeling like a rebellious teenager. Then Tuesday night, John saw it as I was changing for bed. The fight that followed was the worst we'd ever had. He demanded I return it, said it was inappropriate for a married woman to accept jewelry from another man. I'd called him controlling, insecure, jealous. Wednesday morning I'd lied and told him I'd returned it. I'd even made up an elaborate story about how Roger understood it was inappropriate, how we'd agreed to keep things strictly professional. John had been so relieved, so grateful that I'd come to my senses. We'd made love that night for the first time in weeks, and I'd closed my eyes and thought of Roger the entire time. Now, soaking in the tub with my face throbbing, I wondered how I'd become this person. The kind of woman who lies to her husband's face, who sneaks around like a teenager, who risks everything for a few hours of excitement in a chain hotel. My phone buzzed. A text from Roger. "Are you okay? Diane took my phone, but I got a burner. Can we talk?" A burner phone? Of course. We were like characters in some cheap drama. I deleted the text and turned off my phone. I needed to think. By the time I got out of the bath, John was in bed reading. He looked up as I entered, and I saw his eyes go immediately to my neck. The necklace was in my jewelry box now, but its absence felt like a presence. "Feeling better?" he asked carefully. "A little sore, but I'll be fine." He set down his book. "Megan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What? Were you really mugged?" "Of course I was. Why would you even ask that?" "Because your clothes weren't torn or dirty. Because you weren't wearing pantyhose, even though you always wear them to work. Because you still had Roger's necklace on when you came home. even though you told me you'd returned it." The room felt like it was spinning. He knew. Of course he knew. John might be boring, but he wasn't stupid. "I can explain." Can you really explain why you've been lying to me? Why you've been coming home at 10 o'clock claiming to be working when I know for a fact your call center closes at 9? How do you know that? I called your office last week. I wanted to surprise you with dinner. Imagine my surprise when security told me you'd left at 5 with Roger. I opened my mouth, but no words came. What could I say? That I'd been bored? That I'd felt invisible? That Roger made me feel young and desired and reckless in a way John never had? "Are you having an affair?" His voice was steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. "No," I lied automatically. "Roger and I are just friends. Work friends. You're being paranoid." John laughed bitterly. "Right. Work friends who give each other pearl necklaces. Work friends who sneak off to hotels. Yes, Megan, I saw the charges from the Marriott in Bloomington. Repeated charges, at night, on weekends. What was I supposed to think?" I'd been so stupid. Of course he'd see the charges. I'd been planning to say they were for client entertainment if he asked, but he'd never asked, until now. "It's not what you think," I said weakly. "Then tell me what it is. Make me understand why my wife has been lying to me for months. Make me understand why you look like someone beat the hell out of you, but your clothes are perfect. Make me understand any of this." His voice dropped dangerously low. It was monotone, detached. That scared me more than if he had screamed. I started to cry. Not pretty tears, but ugly, snot-filled sobs. I'm so sorry, it just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "So you are having an affair?" I nodded, unable to look at him. "How long?" 3 months. Jesus Christ, Megan. 3 months? And all those times you said you were working late? I'm sorry, I'll end it. I'll quit my job. We can go to counseling. Please, John, I made a mistake, but I love you. Stop. He held up his hand. Just stop. You don't get to say you love me. Not after this. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. John looked at his watch. It was almost 8 o'clock. Who would be visiting this late? I'll get it, he said coldly. Don't go anywhere. I heard voices downstairs, then footsteps on the stairs. My blood turned to ice as Roger appeared in our bedroom doorway, followed by Diane and John. Roger's face was a mess, bruised and swollen like mine. He looked terrified. Look what I found on our doorstep, John said conversationally. Roger and his wife wanted to stop by for a chat. Diane smiled at me, and it was the smile of a predator. Hello, Megan. How are those bruises healing? I hope I didn't hit you too hard. Actually, no, I hope I hit you exactly as hard as you deserved. I pulled the bed covers up to my chin like they could protect me. What are you doing here? Roger has something to tell your husband, Diane said. Don't you, honey? Roger looked at the floor. Megan and I have been having an affair. Louder, Diane commanded. Megan and I have been having an affair, Roger almost shouted. For 3 months. We've been meeting at the Marriott when we said we were working late. John's face was stone. I know. Diane looked surprised. You know? I figured it out. The question is, what do we do now? Well, Diane said, settling into the chair by our dresser like she was staying for tea, I'm not divorcing this piece of garbage. Do you know what divorce means in Minnesota? I'd get half of everything, sure, but he'd still have half. That's too much. So Roger's going to sign over his 401k to me, take a lower-paying position in another department, and spend the rest of his miserable life making it up to me and our children. She didn't even look out of breath. She fixed a loose strand of hair while Roger bled on the carpet, looking at me like I was a stain on a shirt she couldn't wait to bleach. And if he doesn't? John asked. Then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man he is. His career will be over. His family will disown him. I'll destroy him completely. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. Roger flinched. I've already applied for the transfer. I'll be in accounting starting Monday. Accounting? I said. But you hate accounting. Tough, Diane said. He should have thought of that before he stuck his dick where it didn't belong. Diane, Roger protested weakly. Shut up. You're lucky I'm not divorcing you. The only reason I'm not is because I refuse to let you off that easy. You're going to wake up every day for the rest of your life knowing that I own you. Every paycheck, every breath you take, belongs to me and our children. She turned to John. What about you? Are you keeping this one? John looked at me for a long moment. I haven't decided yet. Well, when you do decide, let me know. If you divorce her, I'll testify about what I saw today. Hotel room, both of them naked, going at it like animals. Very helpful in court. We don't need to go into details, Roger mumbled. Diane laughed. Oh, but we do. Your husband deserves to know exactly what kind of whore he married. Don't call her that, John said quietly. Everyone looked at him in surprise, including me. Whatever else she is, she's still my wife. You've said your piece, now get out of my house. Diane shrugged. Fair enough. Come on, Roger. Time to go home and start your new life of servitude. They left, and John and I were alone again. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Thank you, I whispered, for defending me. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I won't have people disrespecting me in my own home. He moved to the closet and started pulling out clothes. I'm sleeping in the guest room. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps. John, please, can't we talk now? I know I screwed up, but we can get through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. He paused at the door. Did you ever think about me? When you were with him, did you ever once think about what it would do to me? Yes, I lied. No, you didn't. If you had, you wouldn't have done it, or at least you would have had the decency to leave me first. He shook his head. 3 months, Megan. 90 days of lies. Over 1,000 hours of deception. That's not a mistake. That's a choice you made over and over again. He left, closing the door softly behind him. I heard the guest room door click shut, and then nothing. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in our bed, my bed now, I supposed, and thought about everything I'd thrown away. John was right. It hadn't been a mistake. It had been 1,000 small choices, each one taking me further from my marriage and closer to disaster. The next morning, John was already gone when I woke up. He'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Staying with Greg and Angie for a few days. Don't try to contact me. I need time to think. Greg and Angie. Of course. Greg was John's business partner, and Angie was a divorce attorney. A family law specialist, to be exact. I'd always liked her at company events. Smart, funny, straightforward. Now she'd probably be leading the charge on John's divorce. I called in sick to work. There was no way I could face the office with my face looking like this. Besides, Roger was still at the office for 1 more week before his transfer went through. I couldn't bear to face him or anyone. My phone rang. Roger's number, his real one, not the burner he'd texted from last night. What do you want? I answered. We need to talk. Can you meet me? Are you insane? Your wife just beat the crap out of both of us and you want to meet? Please, Megan, just for coffee. I need to see you. No, it's over, Roger. Your wife made that pretty clear. She doesn't control me. I laughed bitterly. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she owns you. That's not... Look, I made promises to her because I had to, but that doesn't change how I feel about you. How you feel about me? I was incredulous. You told me your wife didn't care what you did. You said you had an understanding. You lied to me. I didn't lie, I just miscalculated. Miscalculated? She broke your nose. That's why we need to be more careful. We can still see each other, just not as often, maybe once a month. Are you seriously suggesting we continue the affair? Why not? John will probably divorce you anyway. In 6 months, you'll be free. We can be together for real then. The delusion was staggering. What about your wife, your kids? I'll figure it out. Diane will calm down eventually. Maybe in a year or two I can file for divorce. She can't actually stop me from leaving if I really want to. Roger, she will destroy you. Not if we're careful. I realized then that Roger wasn't just selfish. He was delusional, completely untethered from reality, or maybe just that good at pretending. I hung up on him. The man I'd thrown away my marriage for was a coward, a liar, and an idiot. How had I not seen it before? All those times he'd complained about his wife, painted himself as the victim in a loveless marriage, it had all been lies. He was just a selfish man who wanted to have his cake and eat it too. My phone immediately rang again. This time it was my sister in Stillwater. "Megan, what the hell is going on? John just called Derek and asked if you could stay with us for a while. He said you two are having problems?" I broke down and told her everything. The affair, the beating, the confrontation with Roger and his wife. The silence on the other end grew longer with each detail. "You cheated on John?" she finally said. "John? The man who worships the ground you walk on? He doesn't worship me. He takes me for granted." "Are you kidding me right now? That man has done nothing but support you and love you for 11 years. He helped you through Mom's cancer. He paid off your student loans. He's been saving for the house you wanted in Wayzata. And you cheated on him because, what, you were bored? You don't get it." "No, Megan, you're the one who doesn't get it. Do you know how many women would kill for a husband like John? Stable, successful, faithful, and you threw it away for your married boss? He's not my boss. He's just another supervisor." "I don't care if he's the janitor. You cheated on your husband. How could you be so stupid?" The call ended with her telling me I could stay with them, but only if I was serious about fixing my marriage. "If you're just going to run back to this Roger guy, don't bother coming." I spent the rest of the weekend alone in the house. John didn't call or text. I stalked his social media, but he hadn't posted anything. Our friends were starting to notice something was wrong. I'd gotten a few texts asking if we were still coming to dinner parties and game nights. I didn't respond to any of them. Monday morning, I forced myself to go to work. The bruises had faded to yellow-green, and makeup covered the worst of it. Roger wasn't there, probably using a sick day too. The office felt different, though. Conversations stopped when I walked by. People avoided eye contact. By lunch, I understood why. Everyone knew. In a call center of 200 people, gossip traveled at the speed of light. Roger's admin, Carla, had probably seen his bruised face and put two and two together. Or maybe Diane had called HR to complain. Either way, I was now the office homewrecker. I made it through the day by keeping my head down and focusing on calls. Angry customers were almost a relief compared to the judgment of my coworkers. When I got home, John's car was in the driveway. My heart leaped. Maybe he was ready to talk. Maybe we could work things out. But when I walked in, I found him packing boxes in the living room. Not his things, mine. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up. "Making it easier for you to leave." "John, please, can we talk about this?" "We are talking. I'm divorcing you, Megan. I've already met with Angie. The papers will be ready by Friday." No, you can't just decide that without even giving me a chance to explain." "Explain what? How you accidentally fell on Roger's dick for 3 months?" The crude words from straight-laced John shocked me into silence. He continued packing. "I've thought about it all weekend, tried to figure out if there was any way past this. But I keep coming back to the same thing. You looked me in the eye and lied. Over and over. You made me feel crazy for being suspicious. You said I was controlling, jealous, insecure. Classic gaslighting, by the way. Angie explained that to me. I never meant to gaslight you." "But you did. Every time you said you were working late. Every time you came home and kissed me with another man's taste in your mouth. Every time you told me you loved me while wearing his necklace under your clothes." John dash. "I'm not done. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not even the sex. It's that you talked about me with him. Diane was very clear about that. You two mocked me, called me boring, said I was more interested in coffee shops than you. How many times did you laugh about me behind my back?" I couldn't deny it. Roger and I had talked about our spouses constantly, comparing their flaws, reinforcing our justifications for the affair. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" I didn't answer. I wasn't sure myself. John sealed a box with tape. "I'll be staying with Greg and Angie until the divorce is finalized. The house is in both our names, so we'll have to sell it. You can stay here until then, but I'd prefer if you found somewhere else." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Your sister offered, didn't she? Or maybe Roger has a spare room." The bitterness in his voice was like acid. "I'm not going to Roger. It's over between us." "Is it? Because he called the house yesterday. Left a voicemail about how you two needed to be more careful going forward. Sounded like he thinks it's still very much on." My face burned. "I hung up on him when he suggested that. I'm not seeing him again." "Good for you. Only took getting caught and beaten up to develop some sense." We spent the next hour in horrible silence as he packed. When he was done, half the living room was in boxes. "I'll send movers for these once you know where you're going," he said. "My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce settlement. Minnesota's a no-fault state, but infidelity can affect asset division. You might want to get your own lawyer." "John, wait!" I grabbed his arm as he headed for the door. "Don't you feel anything? 11 years, John. Doesn't that count for something?" He looked at my hand on his arm, then up at my face. "It counted for everything. That's why this hurts so much." He gently removed my hand. "Goodbye, Megan." The door closed behind him with a finality that took my breath away. The divorce was swift and brutal. John had documented everything: the hotel charges, the nights I'd claimed to work late, even a few photos of Roger and me at restaurants, taken by God knows who. Angie was every bit the shark I'd expected. I got a decent settlement, but nothing close to half. The judge took a dim view of marital assets being used to fund an affair. I had to sell my Lexus and buy a used Honda. The house sold quickly, and I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Richfield. A far cry from our beautiful home in Edina. Roger's transfer went through, but Diane wasn't done with her revenge. She made sure everyone in the company knew exactly why he'd been moved. His reputation was in tatters. The smooth, confident man who'd seduced me was reduced to a shell who ate lunch alone and scurried away from any social interaction. He kept trying to contact me for the first month. Texts, calls, emails, even flowers delivered to the office. I ignored them all. Eventually, Diane must have found out because the attempts stopped abruptly. I heard through the grapevine that she'd made him close all his social media accounts and installed tracking software on his phone. The call center became unbearable. My team, who'd once respected me, now treated me with barely concealed contempt. Malik, the employee Roger had helped me handle, was openly insubordinate. When I tried to write him up, he laughed and said, "What are you gonna do, get your boyfriend to fix it?" I lasted 3 more months before resigning. With the stigma of being the office homewrecker following me, finding another job in Edina proved impossible. I finally got a position with a small company in Shakopee, a 40-minute commute from my apartment. The pay was 30% less, the benefits were minimal, and my boss was 25 years old. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into John at the Mall of America. I was shopping for a friend's birthday gift, and there he was, coming out of Williams-Sonoma with a blonde woman on his arm. She was pretty in that effortless way, the kind of woman who doesn't need to try. They were holding hands. He saw me at the same moment. For a second, we just stared at each other across the crowded mall. Then he nodded politely and steered his date in the opposite direction. I abandoned my shopping and sat in my car crying for an hour. He'd moved on so easily while I was still living in a crappy apartment, working a dead-end job, and eating frozen dinners alone every night. My sister had been right. I'd had everything and thrown it away for nothing. Roger had turned out to be exactly what John had probably seen from the beginning, a selfish, weak man who preyed on bored wives. The excitement, the passion, the thrill of the forbidden, it had all been an illusion. Now I was 32 years old, divorced, and completely alone. My friends had sided with John in the divorce. My family was cordial but distant. Even my mother, who usually took my side in everything, had told me I'd made my bed and now had to lie in it. The worst part was the regret. It hit me at random moments. When I saw couples holding hands, when I passed a coffee shop, when I lay alone in my twin bed listening to my neighbors argue through the thin walls. I'd had a good man who loved me, a beautiful home, a future full of possibilities. And I'd destroyed it all for 3 months of hotel room sex and the thrill of sneaking around. Roger was still with Diane as far as I knew, still working in accounting, still under her thumb. Sometimes I wondered if he regretted it as much as I did, or if he was already planning his next affair, looking for the next bored wife to seduce. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd learned the hard way what everyone tried to tell me. The grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. And I'd been so busy looking over the fence that I'd let my own garden die. A year after the divorce, I heard through mutual friends that John had gotten engaged. They were planning a small wedding in Duluth, just family and close friends. The bride was a pediatric nurse who volunteered at animal shelters on weekends. Of course she was. John deserved someone good, someone who would appreciate him. I thought about sending a card, congratulating him and wishing him well. But what would I say? Sorry I destroyed our marriage, hope this one works out better. In the end, I said nothing. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I still work in Shakopee, still live in Richfield, still eat dinner alone most nights. I can hear my neighbor upstairs walking around in heavy boots at 2 a.m. The hallway always smells like old cabbage and stale cigarettes. In Edina, the only thing I ever smelled was John's expensive coffee and the fresh lilies he bought me every Friday. I tried dating apps for a while, but when men found out about my past, and they always did thanks to social media, they either ran for the hills or assumed I was easy. I gave up after 6 months of disastrous first dates. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that Thursday evening when I came home beaten and bruised, still wearing Roger's necklace, still lying through my teeth. If I could go back, I'd tell the truth right then. Hell, if I could go back, I'd never have that first coffee with Roger. I'd go home to John, suggest we take a vacation, talk about what was missing in our marriage, work on us instead of looking elsewhere. But there are no do-overs in life. There are only consequences. And I'm living with mine every single day. The pearl necklace? I sold it to a pawn shop for $200, used the money to pay for my lawyer. Seemed fitting, somehow. The symbol of my affair helping to pay for my divorce. They say time heals all wounds. Maybe that's true. But some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. And some mistakes echo through your life forever, reminding you of who you used to be and what you used to have. I'm Megan, 33 years old, divorced, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Richfield, Minnesota. I had it all once. A loving husband, a beautiful home, a good life. I threw it away for 3 months of excitement with a man who wasn't worth the dirt on John's shoes. That's my story. Not a cautionary tale. Not a romance gone wrong. Just the truth of how I destroyed my life, one lie at a time. There's no happy ending here, no redemption arc, no second chance at love. There's just me, my regret, and the echo of what might have been if I'd only appreciated what I had when I had it. John's probably married by now, living in that house in Wayzata we'd dreamed about, maybe with a baby on the way. I hope he's happy. I hope his new wife knows what a good man she has. I hope she never makes my mistake. As for me, I'm exactly where I deserve to be, alone.